You're good.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Eric and Mariah.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we're going to move on to open forum. The Greenville Central School District wishes to facilitate public access to meetings of the Board of Education and to provide an opportunity for public comment at these meetings. Accordingly, the open forum provides an opportunity for members of the public to share thoughts about topics on the agenda. An individual's comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. Additionally, comments may be emailed to the district clerk, Daphne Pearson, using the email pearsond@greenvillecsd.org. In order for an email to be read during the meeting, it must be received by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting and state that the email is to be read out loud. Emails shall be limited to 600 words. Please note that this is not the time to register complaints that need to be addressed confidentially through the proper channels. Remarks that may be considered defamatory, obscene, profane, stigmatizing, or otherwise impermissible in public forums are prohibited and will be declared out of order. Board members actively listen during open forum, but may not immediately respond to comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Do we have any emails?
We do not.
Okay. Tracy was supposed to be here by now. I'm going to move us on to discussion. And the first item for us to discuss is the proposed class of 2026 senior trip. I know that we've had some questions over the last couple of weeks, and I just want to see if anybody has any further questions. I have one that I'd like to just clarify with Todd kind of in an open setting so that everybody hears the answer to it. Todd, could you speak to what the insurance of the district will cover on field trips or a trip like this?
Certainly. So our liability insurance to the district would cover anything that is an accident. So if something happens, an injury takes place for a student or a chaperone on that trip, because as long as it's board approved and a school sanctioned trip, and an injury happened, our liability insurance would cover that. What would not be covered is if there was a medical emergency that's not the result of an injury. So if somebody comes down with appendicitis, that's not the result of an injury or an accident happening, it's just a medical emergency. That doesn't fall under the liability insurance that the district has coverage for. That would fall under that individual person's health insurance coverage, whatever they might have as an individual.
Okay.
That answers your question.
It does, with a follow-up.
Yep.
In that case, if something like that happens and there needs to be any kind of transportation home or to the child or anything like that, is the district liable for that as well?
In which situation? So same thing would apply. If it was a situation that was an injury that resulted in that, our insurance would look to cover that. Again, medical emergency, that person needs to be flown somewhere or needs to stay at a location other than coming back home for an extended period of time, that would not be covered by the district.
Does anyone else have thoughts or questions?
And that would be true for all trips, though, right? You go to New York City, it's the same thing applies.
Correct.
They trip and fall, things are covered.
Correct.
Something else goes wrong, it goes under private medical insurance or other.
I have a question regarding the rooms, if they'll all be in a block or if they'll be scattered.
It would be a block.
And chaperones will either be across from or on either end of them, but on the center on either end, because we have to monitor during the evening as well and take shifts, so we would be with them.
So there would be a chaperone in the hallway.
In the evening, yes, there always are.
All night?
Yeah, on senior trips, you always have to take shifts, all chaperones do, so it's monitored monitored throughout the night.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, maybe it's just for the whole board. Does anybody see anything unique about this compared to other field trips? It seems like there's nothing. I know we had a bunch of questions the other night, but I don't know if there's anything that stands out. It seems pretty consistent with other trips.
I personally think it's unique because it's going out of the country and it's out in open water. I mean, not that you can't take a boat ride on a senior trip, but you're removing the ability for a parent to quickly get to them if something happens, and you're sending them to a foreign country, which whether they need a passport or not, it's still a foreign country, and getting home from that may be difficult. So there's just a lot more questions in my mind.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. What would those questions be? And also relative to, say, some of the trips like to Italy or Spain or some of the foreign language type trips. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to say, oh, what's weird about this that would be unique that we don't approve on a regular basis, or has been approved on a regular basis each year, and because I want to make sure that we're not voting for something or approving something that's odd, but I don't really see anything. I feel like we kind of went through the questions. It seems like, I know it feels weird, but I don't know objectively if it is. So I don't see a unique exposure other than it feels odd to, approve having the kids further away than we personally might be comfortable with, but I don't think they are compared to other types of trips. That's what I'm saying, as far as precedent goes, they might not have been on a cruise, but we've definitely sent kids overseas and to different places that need passports, places that, I haven't been to Italy, so I don't know what the health services are like there or not. I've been on a lot of cruises, and they're pretty awesome. They're pretty good. So I've seen people medevac from helicopters out at sea during storms. I've seen, we've gone into port because someone was sick. They do a pretty good job. I've seen people get sick right in front of me on excursions. And it seems like this trip compared to some is, like it's a little further away, but I feel pretty confident compared to other types of trips and places I've been that they would be at least the same services that they would have anywhere else. I know it seems odd. There's even a jail on these boats, So if someone did something wrong, they're not going anywhere. So their security. So again, I'm just putting it out there to everybody on the board. What are the questions? I know it feels weird, but what are our actual questions to get them answered? So I don't want to vote yes for something that we shouldn't, and I don't want to vote no if I can't justify it.
So I guess I have a question regarding passports, in that this is a foreign country, and I heard earlier in the descriptions and so forth that they don't need a passport. But everything that I've read online says if you step foot onto the island, you need a passport. So I'm a little confused myself when they say they don't need a passport. If you're off the boat onto this land,
So
you have to re-enter.
And I promise you, I have spent hours on this over the last couple of weeks. I appreciate the gracious responses to our questions. I know that we ask things over and over, but we wanted to make sure that we're doing due diligence in giving you guys a fair answer. And from what I've been reading and from what I know from personal experience, if it's a closed loop trip, it's coming back to the same port it started from in the United States. You don't need a passport to go, but if something were to happen when you're in that country, you're going to have a problem getting back without the passport.
Right, so if somebody gets sick and has to be flown out of there, they're not coming back on the ship, they're going to need a passport for re-entry.
I'm sure there are ways around that with help from the embassy and stuff, but the short answer is yes.
Okay.
I don't know how many of our kids have passports. I'm sure many of them do, but I don't know for sure.
Right.
I'm not in charge anymore, it's all you.
Oh, no, you're going to finish it. I apologize for being late. The question, James, that I have is along the lines of passports, with it not being a requirement. Is when the board approves a trip, then part of that trip or the approval process is managing risk, right? As with everything in life. And in order to manage risk, then you minimize the variables. So, for example, the trip to Italy requires passports. So the one issue that I have is related to the passport issue, because in managing risk, if there is an issue, the passport then allows for other elements that help reduce what could happen. But yet, we can't, or my understanding for the trip is that we're not requiring passports. So for me personally, that's an issue in managing risk because of all the potential things that could happen. The other element is then with everyone having to go or wanting to go, then are there students who would like to go, but the reality is economically they can't. So other classes have done different things to still provide an inclusive element to a senior trip, which is about camaraderie. And how is that done with this? So that's part of, or another element that I have where perhaps the trip isn't optimal for that. Does that get at some of your questions on how is this different?
Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to see where everyone was at, because even with that said, that's good to hear. It's good to hear the possible concerns. I think though we have to double check, but even with that passport scenario, with that closed loop, maybe Ms. Hubicki looked at it closer, I think that it still would, I think the issue is if someone goes to another island or goes to another spot, that's where your passport issue comes from. You may have
What I was reading is that they can get on the cruise, they can get into Bermuda.
Right.
If for some reason they miss the boat, or it's a ship, not a boat, they miss the ship, if they have a medical situation where they have to be hospitalized in Bermuda or get care and they can't get back, if a parent needs to get to them, the parent's going to now need a passport. You cannot re-enter the United States. Well, by air you would need the real, no, not even, because it's an international flight, you have to have a passport. So now you've got to involve the embassy. You've got to, if the kids don't have one, you've got to try to get an emergency one while you're out of country. If the parents don't have one, they have to get an emergency one to get to those kids. So it's a little more complicated than just.
What would the risk be to the school at that point if the parents are individually approving each of their own children to go, paying for their costs, are aware, as long as they're aware, hopefully, of some of these things? Do we actually have an increased cost for the school at that point?
Well, I'm going to take this one, and Eric, I'm going to ask you also to put on your thinking cap, because you've lived this experience. So several years ago, when there was a trip, that it was not a class trip, but it was a trip that students were actively participated in, and parents had the option of purchasing insurance in case the trip was canceled. And there was a percentage of parents and students, but I'm assuming parents since they were paying for it, that decided that they were going to manage the risk and not purchase the insurance, even though it was highly recommended from the school and everything else. Those parents then unfortunately, because of health issues, that trip was canceled. And there were several families who lost their deposit, hundreds of dollars. I'm not sure what the exact number was. And they came multiple times to meetings demanding, not requesting, demanding a full refund on the deposit because it was a school-sanctioned trip and the school should have been able to provide that. So given the precedent of that, I'm a little hesitant to put the school into a situation where in the past, that is the behavior I have seen. And if this wasn't one instance, this was multiple groups, and Eric, you lived it, so.
Yeah, I'm chiming in and say that, yeah, people were upset that they lost their money, and parents were upset with the school district having a trip that allowed them to be at risk. I mean, the explanation of saying, oh, well, you knew was not enough. People were upset, so I would say that understanding the risk management, although we all nod our heads as parents and go, yes, 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 when the bad things happen, everybody gets angry. So.
I mean, I guess the question is because someone got upset at their own decision, should we not?
Well,
I understand what you're saying.
Are you speaking as a parent or as the board member? So the question is, are you trying to risk what's the exposure for the school, or are you just?
Well, it sounds like the exposure stays the same. It's just that we have potentially someone that, I mean, to me, would be unreasonably upset. And as we all know, you guys have been here longer than me, people get unreasonably upset sometimes. And sometimes reasonably. So that's, so as long, I think the thing that I keep thinking about with this overall trip, and when talking to some of the different folks out and about, it seems like the bigger piece is for us to feel comfortable that we did a good job assuring that people were aware, or the information was presented, what's there, and that's what we're kind of throwing out here right now. So even if that needed to be part of what we vote on, some kind of caveat that says, hey, where are all these facts written down for people who are going on the trip to make sure that they're aware of. So there's a full disclosure, that's all, for those.
Right, so this is to the Bahamas, and it's a Bermuda.
Well, I know it. I believe I'm familiar with the trip and what's up. I'm saying for those who are buying in, we're going to be going, that maybe there's a requirement that we put, if that helps us to help make it happen, that there would just be a full disclosure, not just so anyone who's finally going to go, or I don't know.
So if I were to make it, I'm going to change the venue and say that it's not to Bermuda, but to Cancun. And at this point in time, with what's going on in the world, I don't know if I would feel comfortable sending anybody down to Mexico. So saying that it's just a different location and it's the same as any other class trip really isn't the same as any other class trip. Because if it stays in the continental U.S., I mean, we could send them to San Diego to go see the zoo, and that would feel more comfortable than sending them to Cancun.
I mean, they're definitely not going to Cancun. They're not going to a country that's at war, having a significant conflict right now. They're going to a place that's not even south of Florida or the Carolinas. I mean, we're
I know it's in the Atlantic. I know where it is.
I wasn't trying to be fresh. So I'm just saying that that's a significant difference, I think, in the comparison that you made. Granted, you might call it a different country, but it's a closed island. It's definitely much different than a lot of the other places in the Caribbean and the Bahamas and such. I just want to have an honest presentation of.
Can I just ask, not to interrupt you, James, but because I think we're on the same track. They have insurance for this, right? That was one of the requirements, that they had to have the insurance that was maybe missed on the last, no?
So-
what is the insurance?
So to my understanding, there's a couple different types of insurance. You could have trip insurance, which says, hey, if something happens, I get sick before the trip, can I get my money back? Or something happens, it's gonna be less to argue about, and each individual who took out the trip insurance could get the trip cost covered, or at least the ship side of things. Then you have your accident insurance, which it sounds like the school has covered, that senior trips are covered, so if there's an accident, then the expenses involved with that are covered. Individual health insurance is if I had a heart attack while I was just walking around, and I was on the ship, or a student was on the ship, that would not be covered by the school. It was just their own health issue, so it would be the same as if they were here or on any other trip.
Right, but they have some insurance that was in the email, so which was it? What are they?
I think what you're referring to is if there is an accident.
Okay.
So our insurance, the school's insurance, would cover it provided it is board sanctioned.
Right, but there's no trip insurance with
They
your?
can purchase,
They can.
choose to purchase that, yes.
Yeah, can we sit you down, because we're gonna have more questions.
Come up to the thing here.
It might be
That way
easier,
we have
sorry
one
guys.
microphone.
That way that everybody that's watching the recording can hear it too.
What I'm seeing is that the SHIP does not accept land-based health insurance plans.
No, correct. You have to-
So
yeah.
what
It
you
has to be
said
under-
about it just being like if you were here and you got sick, it's true.
It would have to be submitted to your insurance.
And they pay later, yeah.
Yeah, and I had given the example in the email. I sent my kid on a FFA trip. It was the same type of situation. Instance recovered, but my son got injured. He was taken by a chaperone to the emergency room. He had stitches. They looked at the paper that I had provided. I ran it through my insurance later, and I was reimbursed. That would be the same thing.
The only problem with that, and this is where personal, and I'm trying really hard to separate it, personal experience with that is my in-laws 5 years later are still paying medical bills because their insurance would not cover out of the country, and they had an illness on a cruise. So an FFA trip, I get it, again, that continental US thing, not, especially around here, not everyone's insurance will cover out of area, out of network. So there's a balance there that they need to be very aware of if this goes forward.
So the other thing, like you had mentioned, it's a closed cruise trip, and I appreciate you looking at all that information. When we spoke with the group travel agent, we specifically said it has to be somewhere we don't need a passport. We said, oh, well, we're getting off and doing excursions with the ship. And we did give the example, well, somebody gets injured, what if you're going on excursion, what if you miss the ship from your excursion? For this particular trip, you cannot miss the ship. The ship cannot leave without us. It's particular in that way because the excursions that we're going on are actually Royal Caribbean led.
Which is why I asked that question.
Right, yeah. So because they are Royal Caribbean led excursions or led guided tours, they have to wait for us no matter what. And so because it's also a closed loop trip and it is only going for me, that is why the passport comes into play. And why it's not required is because when you're on the ship, when it goes down there, when you're off in the water, you're not really going on the island, the excursions you're chosen on the island, they're in the water. But when you're doing that, you're still part of the U.S. So even if they got hurt in the water, they needed stitches, or they got sick, or were thrown up, whatever, they have to bring them back to the boat in order to take care of them. They will not bring them to a hospital in Bermuda. So they will stay as part of, quote unquote, the U.S. while they're there the entire time. That is why there's no passport needed. There won't be any issue with that. And you said, sorry, the insurance about.
I was just wondering how much the extra trip insurance is, and if that's something.
I honestly did not look it up.
Okay.
I could get that to you.
Yeah, it's just the trip to Italy, like I remember there was a basic that was covered for everyone, and then some of us are paranoid and want the deluxe pass.
I mean, I would venture
I've
to
been in
say-
the emergency rooms in more than 9 foreign
I mean, I
countries.
would venture to say it's probably at least a couple $100 added to the student total.
Which also covers like trip cancellation and that.
Correct.
Yeah, somebody gets a flu.
Yeah, so that secondly, like if somebody got hurt, the insurance being covered wouldn't be for out of the country billing to the insurance. It would still be in country billing through your health insurance.
And what are we paying for as a district? What are it's getting you guys to and from the bus to Hudson and back, but there's.
We did apply for that grant, the GEF grant. It was pending. We do not know where that stands at this point. We did ask for transportation because our transportation would take us to either Hudson or Poughkeepsie as long as it was at off hours for the bus, and then the train would take us down to the port.
So it would just be that
We would
portion.
just be, that was what we applied for.
And the rest of the funds are the personal from the parents and kids or what
Correct,
you
and they
have
do
raised as
have,
the.
they do have a class balance that they have, right? We would then take a chunk of it and divvy it up to the students that would be going. I couldn't give that total at this point because I don't know how many students would be going. Obviously, it would change, the more students we have, obviously those would be getting less, but we do have a chunk in the account that we would be using, that they have been saving for, so they have been pretty diligent with that.
And we had donation letters go out nationally and throughout the county. We had over 70 letters come out, and we have been getting donations through local businesses, and others have been coming in slowly. And they are still donating. We did get several emails actually just recently that they were like, we are still donating. And they are aware that it is for the senior class trip. Actually, Julia wrote the letter, and they are aware
And
that
a few places are just waiting for a final destination, so they know what they're going to be
we have a
able to
couple
allot us.
educational grants like with Stewart's, but it's pending the trip being approved. We want to apply for another, we are eligible for another educational grant if it's approved, but we can't do anything until. So there are more grants that are technically pending.
But those are from the outside, from.
They would be from the
private
outside, we have not asked anything
Not
else
asking
of the
the
district.
Yeah, no, I was just wanted to
But
clarify.
that was the only thing that we had asked from the district, was
Just the transportation to get to Hudson.
Just the train transportation and our school bus, obviously,
Yeah.
which is not.
The train transportation, that was for GEF, you said? So that's
We
not
did
the district.
We did apply for a GEF grant, that was all we applied for, we haven't asked any money from any other district place, any
Right.
other.
But GEF is so technically, it's what? It's not taxpayer funds, it's not district funds, it's a separate entity. So from the district itself, it's the bus, just to get.
The
to
school bus,
destination.
yeah, sorry.
And what does that do, if this is approved and our bus is involved, what does that do in terms of our liability for anything that, like, we approve the trip, so we've got to cover anything that happens, or how does that work legally? You know,
I'm not following the question.
it's a school sanctioned trip, we approve this trip, we've said, yes, this is fine. I mean, obviously, same as FFA or any other field trip, and this is a whole new eye-opening field trip research experience for me all across the board, let me tell you. But, as with any of those, when we say yes to a trip, anything that happens on that trip is our responsibility?
Correct. Anything that would fall under our liability insurance, yes.
Even,
From the second those kids are dropped off at school for that trip till the second they're picked up by their family when they return.
And
It's all on the trip.
They're under school.
and if it's not under our liability insurance, are we responsible? They damage something, they break something, by accident, no, you know, but anything else that happens, are we responsible for it?
Yes.
You would say yes as if they're in their rooms on the ship and they decide to party and put holes in the wall and throw the bed out into the ocean.
Have you met
The
these two?
school,
out
the
there?
school would-
That's not the condition we want.
but what I'm saying is I don't,
Sorry, Jake.
what I'm saying is that goes back to the school, that would go back to their personal room and their credit card on file with the ship. I don't think that rolls back to
They probably wouldn't necessarily have their own personal credit card.
their parents' credit card. You have to have one so you can get on the boats. And to even get on to even get on these ships, you have to have everything ahead of time. It all happens on each reservation. That's what I was saying. It actually seems, in a way, it's, from our experience, that's why my family has gone on those trips a lot in the past, because it is somewhat closed and it is somewhat secure compared to some other trip, lots of other types of trips even within the country. So that's what I'm saying. I don't see as a major exposure like I think some of us feel. I don't actually see the exposure the more I think about it. So.
I did have a question. I was a little confused about the one where you said there was a previous trip that you went on that it had to be canceled because of health reasons. Is that what you said? Was it because of a chaperone or something that was canceled that parents got upset they lost their money? Was
It was a Spanish trip, and the Spanish trip at that time, the teacher became ill, and it
So-
didn't work.
we as advisors can get and say, hey, I get really sick, I can't go, but X, Y, and Z teacher has offered to go to my place. With that, is that would minimize where you're worried some of the risk of the trip being canceled?
I don't have that risk concern.
Oh, I thought that's what you brought up, that's why I was,
No.
that's why I was asking.
I was just supporting the fact that the trip got canceled and people lost a lot of money.
Okay.
And then they got angry because it was.
Understand. No, I was just wondering if you were worried that was a possibility.
No, you look very healthy, I'm not worried.
I would imagine you will drag yourself on that boat
Oh, yeah.
with the flu if you have to.
Just to get these kids through the end of the year, yeah.
Has the grade considered like previous years of having a separate day for kids who can't, for whatever reason, go on any overnight trip?
We usually, so in years
Like
past.
the one day to
Like-
Great Escape?
Yeah, so last year they did do a day of the Great Escape because it was a very limited number of
Whatever's
students
in
that
that
went
list.
on the trip. So the class paid for everyone to go for a day to Six Flags.
And they get to escape at the school.
Right, which
at
is
the same
totally
time.
fine, and we would absolutely would plan something, even if it were to just do like a giant picnic with them where everything was then paid for.
That's one of the only
Have
things I've heard.
games and
Right.
stuff, so they could be outside the class, just to
Right.
give them that day where they're all together and not worried about anything else.
Yeah,
Right,
and
well,
it's
it's
just
just
clarified,
job that they can't go, they just can't,
correct.
you know.
No, and it was, they only did that last year, and because I had a senior in
It
that
seems like a
class.
good idea. It's.
Yeah, they only added that extra day on is because the class had so much extra money, because so few kids went on the
They didn't go
actual
on the
trip.
actual, okay.
And they're like, we don't wanna go on that trip for $900.
Right.
So they're like, okay, well, we have all this class money, so they held a senior picnic with like a bounce house and like food and all this stuff, and they also offered the day of the Great Escape, which you did have to go to, but it was offered because kids didn't wanna go on the trip that was being offered, so. But that's the only time
Yeah,
I've
it's a
seen
good
an
idea.
extra thing added on.
I'm not running anymore. I'm certainly not here. Are there any other questions? Any other discussion? All right, thank you both, again, for being so kind and gracious with our many questions, doing our job to research this. It looks like the next thing up is a presentation. So Todd, do I need to read anything on this one, Daphne, or just hand it over? Okay, great. Oh, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bennett.
It's all right, I was going to jump in anyways, Todd. So, no, again, we are at the budget proposal, budget 2 for the Board of Education that we've been working on pretty much since November. And so what we'll do tonight is just go through the program side of things. We go through the same process at each one of these presentations, and again, it seems repetitive, but I do like to keep bringing it back to everything that we do when building our budget is around the district mission and goals. So that is, includes our curriculum goal, our culture growth goal, and our community goal. So as we have discussions and putting together numbers, those are the things that kind of help drive us and keep us centered on building a budget that eventually the board will adopt. So with that said, tonight is the program piece. I will turn it over to Todd now to kind of go through the schedule of where we're at, how we got here, and then we'll turn it off over to our administrators, supervisors.
Thanks, Mike. So as, yeah. A paper copy.
Never mind.
Good?
Yes.
Okay. So we are here tonight for the program component of the budget, which is one of the 3-part components. I'm going to start with some of my typical slides just to kind of set the foundation for our budget presentation. The first one being our budget timeline. This is a busy time in the business office, so during the month of February, we continue to update the budget as information is available, and I think Brent referenced this last time, that the budget truly changes on a daily basis as we gain more information, either on the revenue side or the expenditure side, so continuing updating it on a daily basis. Also, at this time of year, we are looking at enrollment for the purposes of thinking about program and staffing requirements. We review and evaluate budgets by building and departments. So each supervisor and building principal meets with Mike and I, and we go through their requests that came from team leaders and department chairs, so that collaborative process to get information from across the district, that all comes together, and you really start to see pieces of that come together in tonight's presentation. And then also in the month of February, a significant step in the budget development process is the tax levy limit, or the tax cap. So there is a calculation, a formula that the state has established that we put in information based on our current funding and different variables, and it gives us what our tax cap is, meaning the highest that we can go out at a 50% simple majority vote in May. What that is, we'll look at towards the end of tonight's presentation. So those are kind of the milestones that happen throughout the month of February. Also, before I get started, just so you have an idea of what you have for supporting documents tonight, there's 3 different things. There is the slide deck that you're looking at up on the screen that we will go through tonight. There is a document that says supporting documents, fiscal planning and budget proposal, program component. As we go through the slides tonight, there are a number of slides in the bottom left-hand corner. You'll see, supporting documents, reference pages X through Y. That's referencing this document. So if it says additional information can be found on page 6, this is the document that you would go to find page 6 for that additional information. And then the third and final document tonight is a preliminary budget. So that's where the budget currently stands, technically as of February 16th. I have to pick a day to get all these documents together for tonight's presentation. So it's changed slightly since the 16th, but this is kind of a snapshot. As of the 16th, the preliminary budget actually shows each individual budget code in the general fund, what it is for this current school year, what it was in the rollover budget that we presented in January, and then what it is as of February 16th for the program component. So that gives you a very detailed outline of, again, each budget code throughout the entire budget. So those are the supporting documents for tonight. I also like to mention, certainly ask questions or clarification as we go through the presentation tonight. And lastly on this slide, I just want to mention we take feedback every year. So I always ask the administrators for feedback, the board for feedback, if there's things that you'd like to see differently in budget presentations. So while the foundation of what we present is very similar each year because we're presenting the program component, for board members that have sat through this for multiple years, there are some little changes this year. Hopefully you can, bigger font. That wasn't a change for this year, that could be for next year. I could do landscape in bigger font. Digitally, you can zoom in on any of them. Point being, we did change things slightly on some of the feedback to make some information a little bit more understandable. So just wanted to mention that as well. Another foundational slide is this one that has the kind of 3 major components or decision points in the budget. Of these 3, tonight we'll be focusing on that maroon section in the top left-hand corner. So when we talk about program and staffing, what you're going to hear about tonight are some of the elements and the highlights of programs that we have throughout the district and the staffing that is required to maintain those things. And then also tonight in the top right corner in gray, that levy or property taxes. At the end of tonight's presentation, as I mentioned, we're going to look at what the tax cap is and ask the board for some discussion and feedback from you folks of what you would like to see us work on in terms of where you want that tax levy to be within the tax cap. So within these decisions points, we're at that point, we're working in both those areas. In another familiar slide is our budget construction formula. So outlined and kind of highlighted in gray there tonight are budget priorities. So we've been having conversation as an administrative team and again collecting through that collaborative process feedback from across the district, establishing budget priorities and where we want to see our funds be utilized. And then we're also at that point of budget modifications. As numbers come in, things are tweaked and adjusted throughout the process. Preview to next month's meeting, the revenue and the fund balance side. We'll really be talking about that at the March meeting. We will get a little preview at the end of tonight, talking just specifically about the tax levy, which does fall into that revenue component. The big picture here, we started with that rollover budget in January. We have our budget priorities and requests that lead to those modifications and adjustments. We will then look to balance that with what our expected revenues and the fund balance are. All comes together for our proposed budget that will go up for voters in May. Any questions so far? That just kind of sets the stage for tonight's presentation. I said, February 16th is kind of that point in time where I captured all this information and where the budget stood at that time. So this shows for the current year, our budget is at $37,644,000. The rollover budget that we presented in January was at $39,588,000. And overall big picture tonight, the preliminary budget as of that February 16th snapshot, we're at $39,437,000. So that's an increase of 1.793 from this current year into next year's budget, or 4.76%. Another way to look at that, it's actually a slight decrease of about $150,000 from the rollover budget in January to what we're presenting tonight. So I've mentioned a couple times the adjustments that happened throughout this process. So because we presented the rollover budget in January, and now we're here again tonight presenting the first component of the program component, I think it's important to talk through and make sure you understand where are some of those major adjustments that have happened even in just the past month. So to talk through each of these a little bit. So the first one is BOCE services. So this is all of the services that we purchased through our Questar 3 BOCEs. That could be a subscription to an online resource. It could be students attending special ed programs. It's students going to our CTE programs through Questar. So all of those BOCE services, for the rollover budget, we use a 3% just as an estimate to get us started in the budget process. Throughout the month of January and into February, actual rates start to come in. So we don't have all of them, but we start to get a good number of actual rates so that we can really tighten up that number between the rollover in January and the presentation tonight. So if you want to have more details on that, in one of the supporting documents where there's a list of all those BOCE services, anything with an asterisk next to it is updated with actual rates for next year. Everything else is still at that 3% projected. Second bullet here, retirement and replacement breakage. So we have a deadline of February 1 in the GFA, Greenville Faculty Association contract for retirement. So we know by February 1, anybody that intends to retire at the end of this year. I'm going to give you a little bit more information about that in a couple slides later. Third bullet down is health insurance. So for the rollover budget in January, we were using an estimated increase of health insurance of 15% and an increase for prescription of 10%. During January, the very last week of January, we actually get initial rates from the RCG Trust, which is where we have the contracts to purchase our health insurance through. On the good side, estimate of 15% increase for health insurance, it actually came in the initial at 8%. Yay! But wait. Then on the prescription side, I estimated 10%. The initial rate came in at 26%. So prescription up significantly from where I had originally estimated. These rates are initial. We get our final rates towards the end of March. I don't anticipate these rates changing much between when we get the initial to the final. They might change by a percentage or two, but typically not much between the initial and the final. So I have that listed here, but in reality, there wasn't actually a change in what we have budgeted for health insurance. What I had in the rollover, even though health insurance was less, that prescription being that much more, it pretty much negated itself. So what we have budgeted in the rollover is the same as what is budgeted currently, or roughly the same. As I already mentioned, we've incorporated building and department requests. So you're going to hear from the building principals and Mary as transportation supervisor in a little bit with the information about some of their requests. So that is all incorporated into the program component that we're presenting tonight. And lastly on this slide, special ed placements. This is another area that continues to kind of get refined around this time of year, working with Brooke Van Fleet as our Director of Special Ed and PPS, having a better understanding of where students will be placed next year. So these are students who are placed in either Questar BOCE services placements or in private special ed placements. So from the rollover in January, we create a first prediction of where we think that's going to fall, and it continually gets refined. So certainly from January till now, that has been refined and will continue to do so. So kind of the major areas of shifts and change and updates that have happened between the January presentation and this one. So for tonight, as we said, we're here for the program component. New York State requires that we break the budget into 3 components. The program component, the capital component, and the administrative component. Tonight we're presenting on the program piece, and then when we're back in March, you'll hear about the capital and the administrative piece. So I don't typically read a slide, but I think for the purposes of understanding what is the program component, I am going to read this slide. So the program component includes the salaries and benefits of all teachers and staff delivering people services, so everybody that works with students on a daily basis, textbooks, instructional materials, equipment, extracurricular student activities, BOCES program costs, and all the costs for transportation program with the exception of bus purchases. This is the largest component of the district's budget that all falls into what we call the program component. So this slide is just an overview of what we're going to be looking at tonight and talking through these different areas. So this is one of our little changes for this evening. When we talk about the budget every year, we are obviously sharing a lot of numbers and figures and percentages. As Mike talked about at the very beginning tonight, we also want to make sure that all the work that we do around fiscal planning is grounded in our district goals and our mission, our vision. So with that in mind, we also want to ground it in what our programs look like across the district. So in working with Sierra, our principals, and Brooke, and myself worked with Sierra, let's put this together in a little snapshot of a video that what does our pre-K through 12 program look like at Greenville? What is the student experience as a student comes here in pre-K all the way through 12th grade? And because we have Sierra that does phenomenal work, we're able to share a little video to get us started.
Every student's journey starts with a strong foundation. Here in Greenville, that process begins in our elementary school. Students develop strong academic skills while learning social and emotional skills like how to manage emotions, build self-control, and feel confident in who they are.
I'm learning about the civil rights movement. I'm learning how to read. I'm learning how to use oil pastels. I'm learning to play the flute. I'm learning to read music.
Daily recess, physical education 4 to 5 times a week, and vibrant art and music programs support the whole child while still placing a strong focus on core subjects like reading and math, and soft skills like collaboration and curiosity. In middle school, we build on that foundation. Career and technical education introduces real-world learning through business, family and consumer sciences, and agricultural coursework, and gives students a taste of the pathways that await them in high school. Throughout middle school, students begin exploring who they are and what they're interested in through clubs, enrichment opportunities, and hands-on learning. Programs like Science Olympiad, FFA, Media Club, and musical productions challenge students to think critically and work collaboratively. In high school, students prepare for life after graduation. They take ownership of their education by choosing electives, setting their schedules, and pursuing pathways aligned with their goals. Whether it be through an agriculture, technology, FACS, or business pathway, the IB program, Questar programs, or by enrolling in electives that pique their interests. At Greenville Central School District, we're shaping students who are ready for their futures.
What do I want to be when I grow up? My dream is to be a vet. When I grow up, I think I'll be a marine biologist.
I'm going to Columbia Community College to be a nurse.
I'm attending Sunnydale High and I'm studying business and professional health management.
I'm going to the United States Air Force. I'm going to work for BMW Fabrication as a welder.
I want to be the best I can be.
So when you think of this video and then line that up with our district goals and our mission and vision, all of that comes into play when we're talking about budget and our fiscal responsibility to make sure we're balancing the needs of our programs and our students with the fiscal responsibility of taxpayers. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I am going to turn over to the, oh no, sorry, not yet. Got one more slide. I have one more slide for myself. So taking the idea of those programs and what you saw in the video, and that's not all-encompassing of every single thing that happens on campus, but I think Sarah did a great job of capturing in a 2.5-minute video, here is what the experience looks like for a student when they come in pre-K and then all the way through 12th grade. So when you pull that all together for the folks that work with our students on a daily basis in all of those programs, for the program component of our budget, this slide shows the most significant expenditure is on staffing. Right? So our salaries and benefits for all of the folks working in those programs, and this also includes, as I said earlier, transportation, our drivers driving the buses. This is a significant area of our budget. So when you put it together, you'll see an increase in this area of about $930,000 or 4.27%. So this is all of the salaries. As I mentioned, I think at the rollover, there is an added challenge this year as all of our current contracts with our bargaining units are expiring at the end of this current school year. So these are projections and estimates. The actuals won't be known until those contracts are settled. But with that in mind, this all still comes together for this is an estimate of what the increases will be for salaries.
Question.
Yes.
Is this with all current positions, retirements factored in?
Stole my next bullet line, which is okay. So yes, this includes all current positions. As I mentioned earlier, one of the updates between January and now, because we have that February 1 deadline for faculty to inform us about retirement, we have 6 faculty that have let us know that they plan to retire at the end of this school year. That's 5 teaching positions and 1 teaching assistant. So in these salary projections, all those positions are included. This also does show breakage. What that means is a teacher is retiring at a certain step in salary. If it's somebody that's been here for many years, they're retiring from here, obviously their salary is on the higher side of that column and salary schedule. So the breakage is our expectation that if that position is filled, it will be filled with a teacher that will be coming in at a lower salary starting out. So overall, the estimated breakage for those positions retiring, yes, they're all included in here. There's a breakage of about $150,000. So if all those folks were not retiring, basically that salary number would be higher and the benefit number would be higher overall by about $150,000.
Todd, I have a question for you
Yes.
related to the breakage. So when you're using a plug, so to speak, for the incoming individuals.
New hires.
The new hires,
Yep.
Thank you very much. Have we ever or recently gone back and viewed that our assumption in fact is still holding? And what I mean by that is as the labor pool condenses and becomes tighter, our salaries might need to increase, and I just want to make sure that the assumption is trending over time. Does that make sense?
I think so. If I don't answer it, let me know. But from my first year in this role, 3 years ago till now, I've actually increased what we project that starting salary to be based on, hey, let's look at the 5 teachers we hired this past year. Where did they come in salary and column? It is actually trending a little on the higher side because we are attracting folks that worked somewhere else for 5 to 7 years but now want to come to Greenville. That's a great thing, right? We will take that educator that worked somewhere else but now wants to come here. That's just different than somebody coming right out of college and it's their first teaching job. That's even lower on the salary scale. Yeah, so I've shifted that up slightly based on hiring over the past couple of years.
Thank you, that's exactly where I was going.
All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to the principals, and I've asked them to talk about kind of building off of that video, talk to and share about the student experience in their building, some of the highlights, some of the things that they're proud of, and then Brooke will do the same from a special ed perspective. In addition, on each of these slides, you'll see an enrollment chart for that building, or in Brooke's case, for special education. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Urban to start us off with the elementary school.
Thank you very much, Todd. I have to say, I watched that video on my laptop. It's way better on the big screen here. Well done, Sierra. Nice job. Makes me really proud to watch that video. Good evening, board members. I appreciate the opportunity to share just a few outstanding opportunities that we currently offer our students at Scott M. Ellis Elementary School. I'm happy to report, to start at the top of the list there, that our Bookworms ELA curriculum has been fully implemented. This includes finalizing the instructional schedule, aligning the pacing and instruction, both vertically and horizontally, using our planning time, our release time, and our collaborative faculty meetings. We are using student data to guide instruction and intervention during our DI block. And most importantly, we are celebrating literacy and creating visibility for our Bookworms program through our school-wide hallway displays. A second point of pride for us is our ever-evolving social and emotional learning curriculum, which includes beginning and end-of-year surveys to identify students in need of support and measure both individual and whole school SEL growth, push-in lessons from our newly implemented zones of regulation curriculum, as well as a reintroduction of parts of the responsive classroom curriculum, including morning meetings and the use of interactive modeling techniques used by teachers to assist students with step-by-step academic daily tasks. Next on the list is our goal of supporting our students' executive functioning, which includes the skills of self-regulation, organization, working memory, goal setting, as well as planning and prioritizing through time management. We continue to provide consistent curriculum routines and expectations for our students, particularly with the new Bookworms program. This includes opportunities for students to experience academic collaborative learning in both small groups and partnerships. We continue to provide executive functioning resources for faculty and staff, including the most recent literature and best practices as part of our weekly principals bulletin. In addition, we ensure that our Ellis families are also provided with executive functioning support through our weekly Urbans Update video series. At Ellis, we are very proud of our ability to provide memorable experiences for our students, including but not limited to, as you may have seen in the video, chorus, band, and instrument lessons, as well as theatrical performance, including our 5th grade musical, field trips like Nature's Classroom, whole school activities such as Jump Rope for Heart and One School, One Book, participation in Career Day, Ag Day, and Fire Prevention, all of the amazing after-school clubs and tutoring opportunities that we offer, family math and science nights, our very popular Sweetheart Dance, our well-attended Caring Kids activity nights, and the premiere of our much-anticipated Gray Fox Bluegrass Music Residency this May. Lastly, I would like to acknowledge all of the thought and hard work that has gone into the successful first year of the Ellis Collab Lab. Our instructional coaches and library and media specialists work with teachers to design activities that connect directly to curriculum goals and New York State learning standards. They plan the instructional flow and assist with setup so that the experience is ready for students and teachers when they arrive in the lab. This ensures that the lab not only offers enriching learning opportunities, but also reduces the planning and preparation burden on teachers, allowing them to focus more on engaging with students and facilitating high-quality standards-based instruction. In the Collab Lab, students conduct STEM investigations, they participate in teamwork challenges, and choice-based activities designed to build communication, collaboration, and self-management skills, in addition to engaging in inquiry-based and hands-on learning. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening. So in the middle school, as you've heard, with the mission, in the middle school we truly do believe and guide our days by where everyone learns, teaches, and belong, and committed to building that whole student through meaningful academic, social, and extracurricular offerings. And as Mr. Hilgendorf had pointed out tonight, the program front is really big with staffing, and every adult in our building plays an essential role in creating a positive, supportive learning environment for our students every day. And with that, our staffing, our collaboration is the heart of our work. And through annual data reviews, we develop our BLT goals every year through looking at identifying areas for growth and improvement. Our grade level structure really ensures that each student is supported by a dedicated group of teachers, teaching assistants, and aides who work closely together to prepare our students for high school and beyond. And this structure helps us maintain strong relationships with students that go beyond just that year. And also each year, though, keeping our building goals at the forefront, of areas we've identified to grow in. And this year, one of those examples is just the idea of how can we strengthen the curriculum component in the middle school through some of our vertical alignment meetings with collaboration meetings we've included more, just so that we're dealing with more consistent language across the board and vertical, whether it's with ELA, math, social studies, or with science. From instructional practices, I think it's we're very fortunate as a district to have consistent access to technology in every classroom, which is very important, along with one-to-one student devices. You know, teachers thoughtfully integrate technology into instruction. You know, there's a great mixture going on in the classrooms with the technology, and we have a lot of great services and programs we use, with simple things from Kahoot for review to this year we've been learning in faculty meetings how to use CuriPod, which is an AI generated to help do research for best instructional practices and lessons too. So continuing to integrate more of that into classrooms. And these tools are really helping create good student-centered learning experiences for our students here in the middle school. With academic pathways and opportunities, our budget continues to support career and technical education, or our CTE programs. And if you remember a few years back, we aligned our business, our facts, agriculture and technology, and that has really helped, I think, contribute to the growth of some of those electives and pathways in the high school, of really just providing experiences for our student. And we never had, I've been here since 2005, and only in the past 5 years, have we offered ag to our students in middle school to support our programs here for students down the road. We also provide academic acceleration opportunities in math, science, and ELA in 7th grade, allowing students to then pursue more advanced pathways that they may be looking for in high school. And this past year also we were able to enroll eligible students in studio art, so they can start earning high school art credit for students who want to go on that art pathway, which we hadn't done before. So that was exciting this year, and we had many, a good dozen 8th graders who were very excited about that. Social emotional learning, the 4th bullet up there, when we talk about supporting the whole student, that includes a strong commitment to social and emotional well-being. Through our budget, we continue to implement our PBIS program, or Positive Behavioral Intervention Supports, from our Spartan Strong store and just celebrations, to try to build that positive culture within the building, along with that supporting some of our character education lessons that we push throughout this school year into classrooms for. We also, as we've used now maybe 3 or 4 years, our Aperture Education. It's an online self-assessment tool that identifies students who may need additional support. And from that data, our counselors and psychologists, off of a student doing a self-assessment of themselves, are then able to reach out if any of them are red flagged. It's a great tool that I think has become beneficial, and it gives a way for our students to kind of reach out when it's not easy to maybe come forward. And then also our partnership with Twin Counties. We continue to use their counseling services to support some of our students with one-to-one counseling, if there's any type of addiction things, but they also have been pushing into some of our classes here at school, our health classes, PE classes, provide meaningful life lessons for our students. And these supports, like I said, really ensure students feel seen, heard, and cared for here in the middle school. And then the last bullet up there is our club and extracurricular activities. We were very fortunate to offer a variety of things, and not everything is listed up there, but whether it's our musical production, FFA, media club, athletics, science club, art club, etc. I mean, our students are able to explore their interests beyond the classroom, and that's a great opportunity for them. And we have a lot of students here after school every day from 3 to 4. And these opportunities foster leadership, teamwork, creativity, and deeper engagement for our students who are passionate about certain subject areas. So again, just through collaboration, innovation, and shared commitment and belonging, our middle school continues to grow as a place where every student is supported academically, socially, and emotionally, preparing them for success in high school. Thank you.
Okay. For the 4 years of high school are filled with planning and preparation for life after graduation through a wide variety of courses, sports, and clubs that are offered at the high school level. The first note up there, the post-secondary planning, to support our students in preparing for their futures. They engage in a variety of meaningful activities, but there are 2 that I'd like to highlight. So one of the things that students are able to do are select electives that based on their interest. So that gets them excited about the future, kind of diving into some of the career paths that are out there, or even just finding what they may be interested in or may not be interested in. The other thing that I wanted to highlight are our students that participate in junior and senior seminar. I feel like junior and senior seminar is so very important. As you may recall, when we had our partnership with NCURN, which is the Rural Schools Collaborative, we utilized 4 post-secondary checklists. Those checklists are 2 or 4 year college, military checklist, joining the workforce or apprenticeship, and then going to a trade school. And I think Sierra captured 3 out of 4 of those checklists in that video that you saw. And I do know actually that there is a student headed to a trade school, and it's a female. She's going for welding as well too, so I was very excited to hear about that. But each of these checklists is paired with aligned activities such as like the completion of college applications, college visits, meeting with military recruiters, or our partnership through Workforce New York that Matt Berkshire has been the driving force of the last couple of years. The next note up there is our offerings that we have. So our course offerings range from the required New York State Department coursework to honors, AP, IB coursework. Students may also enroll in courses that earn college credit, along with a wide range of electives. At Greenville, we offer 4 CTE pathways that students can earn right here at Greenville without having to leave. Those are ag, tech, business, and FACS. And also, students can also go to CTE programs at Questar, in addition to different other Questar programs such as Bard College, Tech Valley, New Visions, and STEM High School. And then last thing underneath the planning piece is senior privileges. So one unique aspect for Greenville High School is that we are one of the few schools in the area that still offer components of an open campus for seniors. So senior privileges include the ability to leave campus during study halls and or lunch periods, as well as late arrival and early release. So you can imagine this is a very popular thing for our seniors. Students must have a parent or guardian sign a permission slip so that parents know that they have the opportunity to leave without the school day. And throughout the school years, those seniors that have senior privileges must be passing all of their courses in order to maintain these privileges. These opportunities help foster independence and personal responsibility as students are expected to manage their time, make appropriate decisions, and maintain strong academic standing in order to have these privileges. All of those things that I just mentioned link to real-world skills that are needed, not only just in their next steps, but in life. The next part is the extracurriculars and athletics. So in addition to our strong academic offerings, students can also participate in 21 different clubs or organizations during the school year. I know Brian mentioned some of these, but I'll mention some at the high school level as well too. We have high school level FFA, we have art club, ping pong, which is a middle school one as well, SAD, book club, journalism, poetry, trap shooting, interact, media club, DECA, and drama, and that's just naming, a third of them. High school athletics is also very popular as an after-school activity. We offer 12 different sports, and some of those include soccer, golf, cross country, basketball, cheerleading, swimming, and diving. And these sports lead to lifetime fitness, or teaching kids about, or these students about lifetime fitness. So together, our academics, extracurricular, and leadership opportunities ensure that every student at Greenville High School is supported, challenged, and well prepared for success beyond graduation.
Christy, just a quick question for, let's say, some of the students that are at Tech Valley. Do they count in our numbers, or are they in a different pool? Because I'm trying to explain some of the decline that we're seeing.
Yeah, no, they count in our numbers because they get a diploma from Greenville High School.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So each year I talk about special education and special education services, but I haven't really ever shared the continuum of services. What exactly does special education look like here in Greenville and across the state for that matter? So I had created a chart for you in your documents that broke down each of the sort of special ed services that we provide, not only here in district, K-12, but also included those private placements and residential placements. So looking at the chart here, the State Education Department has charged all directors of special education to make sure that we are providing services within a least restrictive environment. for students that are requiring additional support services through special education. And to start, we start with the general ed population, the general ed classroom first. And that's kind of where our RTI level of support comes into play. So it's the gen ed classroom with additional supports that can be provided in that classroom by a variety of other staff members, such as reading specialists, math interventionists, coaches, and even the classroom teacher themselves. Then we move down into related services. Well, what are related services? Our related services that we have here in the district, we have the speech and language, we have speech and language services, occupational services, physical therapy services, counseling, psychological counseling that comes through our school counselors, our school psychologists, correct that, and skilled nursing. So those are the related services that we provide here. And then as we move down the continuum, we have consultant teacher indirect. And what that looks like is the special ed teacher is in a classroom, for example, an ELA class, and that consultant teacher is working directly with the classroom teacher, not specifically with the child, but within the classroom setting, providing accommodations and modifications to, yes, help the child that's in the class, but also help others. Then we move down to the next level, which is consultant teacher direct. That's where the special education teacher is working directly with that special ed child in ELA or math. And there can be a culmination of a variety of these models. It's all going to be based on what that child needs, based on the evaluations that are completed is what's going to drive these services. So you may see some students would have consultant teacher, direct, and then move on. They need a little bit more support, reteaching the material, they'll move into a resource room model with that consultant teacher support. If that level of support is not sufficient to meet the child's needs, then we would move into a more restrictive type setting, which would be our special class, like a part-time special class, meaning maybe they go in there only for the ELA or the math, and then they push out for the other subject areas. Or sometimes they go in only for one of the subject areas and then a support time later in the day because they need some additional reteaching. And if that is not sufficient, based on our data, we would have to come back to committee and take a look at, maybe a child needs to be in a self-contained classroom full-time, which we currently have 3 at the elementary school, 2 at the middle school, and 3 at the high school, sorry. And in those programs, the child is provided specific instruction at a modified level because they're unable to meet the curriculum guidelines within that classroom setting. So, and it's not on this list, but it's in your chart. If a child is in our self-contained program, I'll talk a little bit more on my other slide, and we find that they need either their behavioral needs are most significant, that we're not able to manage them within our current continuum of services, we would then, either behavior or academic, and sometimes significant medical needs also play into that. If a child has a feeding tube or some specialized disability that requires a specific program, then we would look at private placements, our Questar programs, and when all else fails, and it's probably the students that have the most significant behavioral needs, then we would look at residential placement, meaning that they would go and stay there, and we as the district would pay for that placement. So that is our continuum of services, and I have that in the chart for you to reference. But I think it's important to know that, when we're saying special education K-12, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's, there's a variety of different support systems that we're going to put into place based on each child's needs. So that brings me to the next bullet down, the additional supports, and we have a variety of different supports, but Sarah was able to capture some of our unique places at Ellis in her video, so I wanted to kind of share a little bit about our motor lab. And you know, we're very proud of our motor lab at Ellis because it's a big piece of helping students with their self-regulation and really getting kids ready to learn from, you know, either a fine motor standpoint or gross motor needs. Really, the motor lab is set up in stations. It is run by our occupational therapist, who then trains support staff and teachers to help support the students within that environment. As you saw in the video, there's a great swing that we have in there. We're very excited. We were able to purchase that last year, and it's been a hit. It helps throw out a big word, helps regulate students with their proprioceptive input, you know, getting them what they need sensory-wise, in order to be able to, you know, be in the swing for a little bit and then integrate back into class, and they're ready to learn and help to regulate their body. So the motor lab is a great space that we're using, primarily at Ellis, because that's where we're seeing a lot of the dysregulation. Do we have some dysregulation in students in middle and high school? We do, and some of those self-contained classes, when the weather gets nice, they will walk down and utilize the space or help assist another class in the space, which has been fairly new as well. Like some of the high school students go down and help support those students within the motor lab if they're looking to have a career as a special ed teacher or an occupational therapist. New to us this year, is our Zen Den. We have regulation. We are no longer allowed to have timeout rooms. So, you know, sometimes students need a place just to go and relax and calm their body. So the psychologist and the occupational therapist and speech therapist got together and decided, okay, we're going to make a Zen Den in that space. And they opened it up. We have some soft seating in there, lighting, music, there's puzzles, coloring. So if a child needs to go to just, you know, they're on meltdown mode, they need a place to regain their thoughts and have a calm type setting, our Zen Den is where they would go. So we're very proud of those places, those spaces, and our staff has really have been great in implementing it, not implementing the activities and strategies that are provided in those two areas specifically, so that, you know, yes, we're using it for our special education students, but then we open it up to all students. Everyone can use that space. So, yeah. So I just thought this was important to share in a very succinct way, the support services that we have through special education.
So with the video and then building these other pieces onto it, the idea was to make sure the board and the community has a good understanding of what does that experience look like for our students at each individual building, and then obviously work is really speaking from that pre-K through 12 perspective. Like, what does that look like? And then what does that mean in terms of the budget? So when we talk about these numbers, all these numbers in the request, it's all to support everything that you just heard about and the things that you saw in the video. So trying to connect these pieces together. The other piece that I want to add, and hopefully this comes through, is we truly work as a district-wide administrative team to put together all these requests. I've always admired about Greenville from my first years here, it's never this like, you know, one building against the other. Yes, Christy and Brian argue sometimes, but it's not about budget, right? It's really, we come at this from a district-wide approach of making sure that we're balancing the needs across the district and addressing the needs of our students across the district. So the next couple of slides, you're going to hear administrators speak, like Brian's going to speak about things, but he's actually speaking about requests from across the entire district, because that's how we look at this when we put together the budget.
A question first.
Yeah.
Is this a good time to ask about enrollment, or are you going to cover it?
Nope, you can ask.
Okay, so two questions on the enrollment. In the supporting documents, page 3, it mentions how many sections you're proposing for next year at the elementary school. Is that any different from this year, or are those section numbers staying the same? So like 4 of this grade level, et cetera?
This is all the same as current. Because I see what she's like. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
And then for Brooke, how are you predicting, or what is driving the climb for next year on your enrollment?
Students moving in, students newly classified, we are seeing an increase in preschool students with significant needs. I like to joke and say, someone please take the sign down off the thruway, but it really isn't that, students are coming in with more significant needs, and that is consistent across the state. So most schools are seeing an increase in special ed services.
So these enrollment numbers include the UPK program?
These numbers right here, yes, they do. Yes, they do. They do not include 504 students, which is a whole other separate. Yeah.
When was the last time, if we're seeing this statewide, that there really has been a significant increase in reimbursement from the state?
Great question. We haven't, besides our 611, 619 grants, that's
Not much.
minuscule compared to, the services.
I think it's worth just mentioning because schools are picking up, increasingly the community is required to pick this up and so forth. And I think sometimes we don't step back and look at the numbers. So having it and seeing the increase in the percentage of the population and so forth brings that home, that message home.
That was actually one of our advocacy points when we were at the Capitol a couple weeks ago, that Todd was able to speak to what our percentage of reimbursement is for some of these programs and how much we're spending on some of these one child going here or there because they need to and it's our job. And that actually, I think, triggered and caught the attention of the people we spoke with more than anything else we said to them. They were like, that's crazy. Yeah, we know. Yeah, so.
And I mean, I can talk a little bit about it now, but I was going to save it for the other slide, but this leads into it. With that significant need, we're seeing that increase in those behavioral students that we're not able to program for here. And we're not the only district, it's across the state, and there are less and less placements for these kids. So, the question is going to be like how do we provide services for them? They deserve an education just like everyone else, and if their behavior needs, I mean, we're not talking just yelling and throwing things. I mean, we're talking significant enrollment, violent behaviors, hurting themselves and others around them. I mean, that we can't have that in the regular classroom. So that's been quite a challenge. And to your point, and you'll see in my other slide, the significant increase with just a few students needing some specialized program. Yeah. Yes.
It's from, on the chart for over those couple of years, that's like a 20% increase, which is, do we think that we're going to continue to have increases? Is that what I know you spoke a year or two ago about it, you brought it up, it was like, hey, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
You're really trying to flag some about that, for the public about that, but it doesn't even look like it might plateau, just like, do we know anything driving?
I mean, I think some of the COVID years have played a significant role in it, but I mean, I can't even say that. I mean, I think it's just our society in general, I don't want to get all philosophical on it or, but I
didn't know if maybe there were sometimes the way we measure things changes, metrics change, but we're not, that's not.
No.
It's just literally.
I mean, and special ed is pretty much regulated by Part 200 from the State Education Department, and that's kind of why I wanted to show you that continuum of service, because those are, that's the process that I have to follow. When I'm running a CSE meeting or that's the Committee on Special Education meeting or CPSE, which is the preschool portion of it, I have to look at, what can we do for that child within the gen ed setting first and kind of layer it on. But we're seeing more students coming to us that are already at this higher level. I mean, there's no way I could put some of these students in a regular gen ed class because they're just not at that capacity.
Thank you.
Yeah, and again, I just would like to say that, I think folks have spoke eloquently about the rise in the concern in and around special education services and being able to provide the necessary supports for our kids. And I think one of the biggest things that we have seen a change in, and when we take a look at special education, when they talk about the percentage of students who should, districts should take a look at as far as being, getting services, we're not really working with learning disabilities as much. We have come a long way in helping to design programs and curriculum to help students with learning disabilities. It is truly a social emotional issues that we are struggling, not just in Greenville. It's been one of the biggest things that we've tried to advocate from a superintendent side of things, because we're seeing it across the state. And James, you asked what's causing it. It is very difficult to say and point to just one thing. We have people coming out of COVID. We've got the rise of technology, the use of technology. We've got parents who are struggling to make ends meet. We've got a lot of socioeconomic issues that are tied to some of the issues that we're seeing here. And there are no options, or very few options for students to get services they need, not only in rural counties, but across the state. They continue to be an area of concern. We talk about pipelines of educators. It goes the same way for special educators, counselors, speech, OT, PT. We're not seeing folks coming into these areas of the profession that would certainly help us serve the kids that we're currently seeing now. So it's a real big issue. It's not just, we got to figure out how do we deal with them because they're our kids, but there is really more of a global issue at play here, and it's trying to muddle through these areas of concern to get to providing what we need to provide for our kids.
Okay, so next up, Doc, I'm going to give you a quick overview here of K through 12 requests. Please note the supporting documents on the bottom where you can kind of take a look at each of these categories here for each building if you want more details on them. But just to give a quick overview, some things first of all, you can see there isn't much of an increase here from last year this year, and I give a lot of credit to our department heads and team leaders for really taking a strong look at their budgets and making sure that, if they are requesting more, what is the rationale for it? And that's what, we ask that when we look at stuff like this. And so just kind of, when you talk about equipment, we're talking about things that are over $1,000 per item. So some sample of your requests this year are just instruments at all levels for our music department, a planer for tech, a washer dryer set, and then with special education, some specialized resources for certain students, such as like specialized seating and things like that. From contractual, we're talking about items in this category are IB diploma programs, some of our student assembly programs, a repair of classroom equipment, and also musical instruments. We are able to send a lot of ones that we own out to be repaired, as well as our physical therapy services and occupational therapist services too. Materials and supplies, again, this is just from basic school supplies to specialized needs in classes, particularly like our science classes where there's a lot of lab work, and some of our art and CTE classes, again, for example, family consumer science, a lot of the food items are purchased for a lot of the classes that are offered there. And then the last one up there, code, is the textbook code, and these are to provide instructional content for all classrooms. And these could be paper or digital, depending on what is being ordered for textbooks. I would say there's a little bit of a decrease there, just in terms of probably not using as many actual textbooks in the classroom, because we've used them over the years and find that sometimes there's just better resources out there that we're finding.
Todd, I have a question related to the contractual services. So I'm assuming on page 12 then is the BOE services is basically contractual services? That's my first question. I'll give you a minute.
So page 12 lists out all of the BOE services, correct?
All right, so that is considered when we say contractual, that's what's in, no,
Nope, so that's gonna be on a separate slide that's pulled out separately that Christy's gonna speak to in a minute.
Okay.
Contractual here is the other things that Brian mentioned, so like the IB program is in here.
Got it, okay, that's page 8, okay. All right, then I'll hold my question then.
I have a question on page 9, the materials and supplies. It's talking about the purchase of cell phone storage pouches. I thought, when we asked about it a couple weeks ago, you guys, have we discovered a need for more pouches because there's been a problem? Or because we talked about anticipating for next year there being enough?
I believe that's just rollover, correct, Tom? Yes. So,
Yeah, it's to purchase some additional to have for next year. It's not replacing them all, but it's the ones that are busted or broken or so gross that nobody wants to touch them, to replace some of those. It is an increase because in this current budget, we had nothing budgeted for that, right? That wasn't on our radar last year at this time. Going forward, there probably will be an increase there. It will probably just be that flat amount that it's a replacement amount each year.
Question
okay, kind of we're already talking about some of this already. But as you can see, there is a significant increase here for special education based on the reasons we were talking about. One of the other things that I just wanted to add in here too, part of this increase also has to do with foster care students that are in other districts, that are placed in other districts. So we are also responsible for providing reimbursement to those districts. So if we, for example, so if there is a student that enters the foster care system from our school district and goes to Cara Durham is going to bill back us for that service. So that's just another thing I wanted to add in there on this slide. Yes, yeah, we're responsible for their primarily special ed services. And these are our, our high cost kids that are needing these significant specialized program primarily for behavior. And they're, like I said before, it's not just your average behavior. I mean, we're talking significant behavior needs that are violent. I mean, this year was the first year we had to purchase arm sleeves for a student because of the significant fighting. I mean, those are some examples. That's an example of one thing that we're not able to, manage here in the district. I've also had meetings with the Questar special ed team because you'll notice in this section as well that our BOCES tuition services are down. They're not accepting these kids in their program because, like us, too, it's hard to find staff members that are trained in significant behavioral management strategies. So, we're going to continue to have those conversations as a Questar group in our directors meetings to see, who's going to create a program, how is that going to look, how are we going to be able to support these kids if there are not placements available. So it's a significant need. All right, here we go. Here's the BOCES requested services. So this slide indicates a request for different services from BOCES. BOCES fees in the program component come from a variety of different services. Some of them are listed right up there that we purchase through Questar and other surrounding BOCES like Cap Region. This includes everything from the CTE programs that we send our students to special education placements, also to the arts and education and enrichment program, so that supports Nature's Classroom in our high school and middle school musicals. And these are all aidable through BOCES.
Yeah, so what's driving the cost? So for example, I've got a 45,000 increase for the Tech Valley New Visions. Is it the one particular or is it kind of across the board?
So remember in the beginning, Todd talked about what we have that was more permanent information since the last board meeting, I believe, and one of the first things on there was some of these, like BOCES provided us with all of their information. So yes, things for Questar, Tech Valley, things of that nature are going up. So there is a decrease, like as you can see up here on the slide, there's a decrease of a little over 2%, because there's fewer special education students that are going to the Questar specialized programs, like Brooke just said, and more students are going to private placement, so you're gonna see that cost coming out of the BOCE services, but they're going into other places in our budget. Also, we are budgeting for fewer students to attend the BARD program and the STEM high school that's at Hudson Valley. It ebbs and flows every year with students that are interested in there. For example, for Tech Valley, I think my first year that I came here, we had a student at each grade level, and there was like a fight to get in. Like in Tech Valley does a lottery system in order to choose which Greenville student will come if there's multiple from a certain grade level. Over the past couple of years, we've had students come back from Tech Valley because it just wasn't their jam, like it wasn't what they expected it to be, or just they didn't mesh well there, whatever the reason was. And I think the only student that I think there's only one student at Tech Valley right now, and she came and spoke a couple months ago at the board meeting. The same thing with the STEM program at the one at Hudson Valley. Last year we had 3 students graduate from there. We had 2 9th graders. Those 2 9th graders are now 10th graders, but there's been nobody new that has been interested. But those 2 10th graders were siblings of 2 of the students that graduated last year as well too. So it's like a family, like the families know of it and they're sending their kids there. That recruiting from Tech Valley and from P-Tech kind of comes through at the 8th grade level. So I think between Brian and Michelle Fisher, they kind of like organize, right, like an event where.
Yeah, we send emails out to different parents and stuff, but I mean, this year we probably have 7 or 8 kids interested. So some years we might have 1 or 2. Again, it just really depends on the students. We've had students who've been visiting the past couple months to see if they're going to have to apply. But then, again, we have that lottery. So, but we also keep track of that down the road. So, for example, as Square was saying, and the student introductory year, we might look back at the list of kids that have interested and see if they're interested that time.
And our BARD college program as well too. So BARD college, one of the campuses happened to close. I think it was the one that was the out-of-state one had closed. And the BARD program is now moved into the Questar Hudson building. So they're not even part of the college campus. So when we say, oh, you can have this college experience, well, you're in a room at Questar where all the other kids are doing CTE coursework. And yes, you're still exposed to college professors. So it's not really the program that initially was, how it initially started. So we do have fewer kids that are interested in the BARD programs.
Okay, but just to clarify, I think the fact that these programs are available and that our students take advantage of them is wonderful. And so I don't want to create any type of perception that I don't support them, because I think they're vital and it helps us address the needs of many of our students. I just want to clarify, is it the increase that we're seeing because more students are interested, or because BOCES increased?
BOCES increased, correct.
So it's a little bit.
Right, we should talk to that board.
Anybody want on it?
Well, BOCES costs are going to increase like every other area, right? So there's
right, and we have no control over that.
Correct. However, more significantly, and it's down in the paragraph under high school, is the number. Tracy, if you're looking at the 45,000 number, if that's the one that drew your attention, the career tech in Tech Valley. So that's any of our students that go to a CTE program. Right. Tech Valley is also included in this lump of students, as is the New Vision program. We are billed by Questar on a 5-year average. So based on a 5-year average of how many students attend those programs, we're billed on that 5-year average number. That's a good thing because it helps avoid there's a year where suddenly there's just this huge spike and kids are interested and the next year it drops off. That would be very challenging. We have this 5-year average number that's going to be a little more stable. With that said, our average has ticked up every year. So in here, it actually says the 5-year average that we are being billed on for this current year is 49 students. For this current year, though, we actually have 59 students attending. So the bigger increase there is a result of we have more students attending, and our 5-year average number is going up.
And you know what? If that's the answer, I fully support it. I love this program, and so I just want to be very clear and upfront that yes, I support it. I just want to know why.
Yeah. That's
Tracy, can I can fill in some of the blanks there. Questar had a budget presentation, Questar budget presentation last week to its board. And all BOCES across the state, the costs are going up. But Questar is unique in the fact that we provide over 600 services to schools throughout this state and throughout many schools in other states. And those services are a fund driver for a lot of what Questar can do. So that underwrites a lot of the educational programs. So we looked at the cost comparison with other BOCES throughout the state, and the increases from other BOCES to their component districts compared to the increase for Questar to the 26 component districts that we have was significantly less. I don't know if that helps you. You know, an increase is still an increase, but it could have been a lot worse. If they didn't, and we buy a lot of those services, this district as well, but, and the reason we've been, James and I were talking about this last month, the reason we buy those services is because we couldn't provide them at a cheaper cost ourselves. If we could, then we would. I visited George Washington School. I know Brooke's very familiar with the principal there now, which is a special ed center, whole school for special needs kids, and they're full, and beyond full. And the answers and the questions are similar because, you know, we have an influx of kids coming in that need services, but there's no one, there's very few placements available. So the prices of those things are going to go up because of need.
Thank you. It does help to clarify. I just wonder whether the state needs to look at the overall structure and how BOCES bills the schools or whatever, especially as they look for more and more regionalization. You know, so as changes are happening, at some point it behooves us to step back, reassess it, and say, is this really meeting all of our needs? So I just needed to thank you. I'm glad to know that ours is on the lower end of the increase.
I can give you that.
Just a quick note, is it something that we could, I don't know if we have our liaison still, but is it something we could look at as a board to petition school board association about?
Well, I think that during lobby day probably would have been, that's the more effective way, right, exactly, for that.
But yes, it's an ongoing lobby in the state school board association. This is not a, there are seminars on it at the conference every year. There are people up in Albany all the time about this.
Right.
From our perspective.
We could put together something as a school if we wanted to, right?
Not to your point, it's not great, Jamie, but Brooke had mentioned that the folks that are going into the field of special ed and feel the needs of special needs kids, they're not there. But that's very, very similar to every other curriculum in schools. Nobody's becoming a teacher anymore. And the most difficult teacher is a special ed teacher. There's just no denying that. So, you know, if you're not going to take one route, you're definitely not going to take the other route. So encourage kids to become teachers. It's a great profession.
I would agree with that.
One other note on the BOCES slide that plays into next month's presentation on the revenue side, but you're going to see in the supporting documents for tonight's presentation as well, is the BOCES aid rate. So the amount that we get back the following year from the state from purchases that we've made with BOCES is actually trending down and has been over the past couple of years. So from 23-24, where it was about 63.5%, meaning for every dollar we spent, we got 63.5 cents back. For next year, it's projected to go down to 53.8, so almost a 10% decrease over the past 3 years in the aid ratio that we get back from BOCES. So while we still always look to purchase services through BOCES when we can, because we're getting that aid back, that aid is less than it was previously.
So,
and more to come on that when we talk about revenue.
So what is driving that number down?
So that number is driven by the wealth ratio of a district. So what that means is how we compare to other places across the state. So in comparison, we have become wealthier than we were 3 years ago. So the aid that we get back for BOCES is based on our wealth ratio or our need as a district. For us as a district, has that drastically changed over the past 3 years? No. But in comparison, when we're lined up with every other district across the state, we've shifted in that listing to a place where we get less aid back.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we're going to shift gears. Admin Group 1 can vacate. And Group 2 will be coming up. While they do that, I'm going to step in as Denise because
She's right there.
She's coming.
Yeah.
Is she really?
I waved her in for you.
Denise, I just said your name. Your slides are up if you would like to.
It was perfect timing.
It was perfect timing.
It's very exciting at the gym right now.
Are we winning?
We are 39-21.
Nice. Thanks for the update. You're right on time. I literally just clicked your slides, so off you go.
So you can see the athletic overview. I'm not going to read the slide for you, but we have 47 PA positions. We have 13 athletic programs. We're right around 240 athletes per year, we continue to upgrade our facilities. We continue to think about new sports that we could offer for our kids, and it's really exciting. So there's not a lot of changes as far as athletics goes with the budget. Equipment, we went down a little bit, and we're looking at indoor mats for the batting cage to save on the floor. A couple of pitching mounds, movable ones that we can, Rich and I discussed maybe turfing the outdoor bullpens. And so those pitching mounts could be put out there and used by the student athletes, and that would keep down maintenance and so forth. And also volleyball, our volleyball standards and equipment they're kind of out of date and they've been around for a really long time. So we're having to fix them quite a bit, so we're looking at replacing them a little bit by a little bit. Contractual, any increases you see there, at the beginning of this year, there was a $3 increase at every level, modified JV and varsity for all officials. So that bumps up our costs a little bit. So we're trying to put a little extra in there for that reason. Materials and supplies minimal, and our BOCE services very minimal as well. I'm going back to the gym. Very excited.
Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome.
As we look at technology, K-12, we're kind of operate with these two goals in mind. We want to provide equitable technology learning spaces, and we want to provide equitable technology for all of our students. And so what that means is teachers in classrooms, teachers should have the same experience no matter what classroom they're in. Right? They should have a minimum set of technology tools. And we've worked really hard to make sure that those tools are basically the same. So it really does not matter what classroom you're in. You should know you should be able to use the tools that are available to you. And that's good for the students as well, right? They have the same experience from one classroom to another. Doesn't mean that they're only technology tools, but there's a minimum set that we want to have. Same with the students. We want to have, not every student, families can't afford technology for all their students, right? You may have a big family, but not be able to afford technology. We want to make sure that all our students have the same experience with technology, so we provide one-to-one computing devices. We have for many years. To drive that, we have this long-range equipment plan that we developed back, way back off the slide at this point. And this is, I go into a little detail with this because this is the largest technology expenditure, and it is K-12. And we have a plan in place. This is how we provide devices for everyone. And as you look at that, the bordered column there, that is the current year, 26-27, the budget that we're looking at. And basically it says that we're gonna replace a third of the student devices, as well as this year, this is the year for the admin devices to get replaced. Other years might be the teachers, other years might be office staff, but that's what we look to do, and every year it's something different. So this is a representation of, hopefully graphical, and makes it a little easier, of our long-range plan. And this is the dollars that back that plan up, and really this is a little bit of an eye chart, but the idea here is that we try to purchase devices over 4 years, and that we find that that's the best to leverage state aid. We do use that BOCES purchasing, and you can see that the bottom row is basically the net increase to the budget every year. And you can see the current year is only up $500. We're not asking for any increase in this line. And the only reason that's gone up is because, as Todd referenced, our BOCES aid has been ticking downward. So that's the largest technology expenditure, long-range purchase plan.
Scott, I just have a question. As technology obviously evolves, and is there a committee, or which committee, that kind of looks at forward thinking to say, okay, over the next 10 years, as wearables become the next big thing, like how, it's very difficult to plan, but at some point we do have to plan, or at least anticipate, how will some of the new technology be incorporated in?
Yeah, so the tech committee basically does that. And it's not a required committee, but the technology plan is a requirement by the state. We are required to submit a board-approved plan. I think it's every 3 years. And so that tech committee does a lot of that kind of work, trying to look forward. School districts are typically slow to adjust to that, but it's still a worthwhile effort to look forward. And we have made changes in the past 10 years with our technology, right? We've made some minor shifts with what types of devices, what types of software are we using, and yeah, so that's the mechanism we use for that forward thinking. As we look at technology in the budget overall, you can see this slide here. Equipment is all of the equipment that's not able to be purchased through that long-range plan. This is the long-range plan that we buy through Questar, so it is all state aided at the BOCES rate. This equipment here is also state aided up to a point. You can see that note there. And so this is things like printers and maybe replacement interactive boards or mice or smaller items that are not necessarily included in a long-range plan. Contractual for us is basically contracts, service contracts. Unfortunately, school districts have been the victim of some big increases in this line, and this is due to the way software companies are managing subscriptions. For instance, an example would be like our Wi-Fi. So we used to be able to buy an access point, this access point right there that's given us wireless access. We used to buy that outright, and it was ours, and we were licensed, and we were good to go. Now everybody's moved to a subscription model, right? We cannot do that anymore, and we have to purchase, we have to pay for it every year. We're not the only ones that are, this is a nationwide change in the model. So that's why you see that number looks a little high. It's not going up, but it is a high number in my mind. Materials and supplies, they're small. This is just like a miscellaneous toner and supplies. Software is, again, a state-aided code, and this is a lot of our subscription software, online software that we use. And then the software is in that line. It's the stuff that's not BOCES aided. And then, of course, we have the BOCES services, which is the biggest number. And that includes the lease purchase, the long-range purchasing plan, which I talked about, plus a long list of software subscriptions and services, including our internet, our firewalls, any protection software, virus protection, all that kind of stuff is wrapped into that BOCES services number.
Scott, do you have an opportunity to sit with either teachers or department heads on software needs to say, hey, here are some things that we'd like to incorporate? Like, how does that whole process happen?
Yeah, so typically we like to pilot software. So we would get a teacher wants to use a piece of software. We want that teacher to use it for a little bit, make sure it's worthwhile. Let's get a few teachers to use it. And that's kind of, I mean, we're assuming that it's all, meets all the standards as far as privacy and the Ed Law 2D standards and all those kind of things. But we like to see it piloted or have at least some anecdotal information, maybe from another district, that this is a good piece of software before we move ahead to something like that. And then we'll look to adopt it full scale. And that may look, it looks different for each piece of software. Right, we may do an in-service on it and see if teachers are interested in it, if it's a good piece of software. Or it may just be a grassroots thing. Hey, we got 10 teachers that love this thing, and so we end up adopting it. So. But it all goes through me when we look at approvals. Any other questions?
Laptop, and we'll bring it that close. Good evening, everyone. So, as you know, our district is vast, and it covers nearly 1,000 students, approximately 1,700 miles a day to various programs and Greenville Central School District. This slide provides a look at the wide variety of routes, both during the school year and throughout the summer. Some are in-house, while others are contracted out. During the year, we communicate with neighboring districts regarding possible intermunicipal agreements under which we can transport for that school, and the bill cost is shared. All right, so some updates. I think we've all concluded that the bus driver shortage may never recover. I do remain optimistic, but it is a struggle that all districts are dealing with. With that being said, we could possibly see 3 to 5 retirements in the next 1 to 3 years. We will continue our efforts in recruitment and remain positive, but I feel it was important to share with you that these problems are not going away, and they're probably going to get exponential as we move forward. We purchased 6 buses, and we have received 3 of those. We were supposed to receive them in the summer of 2025. We are hopeful that we'll be able to receive the other 3 by the end of March. And I will keep Todd updated on that as well. Diesel bus production timeline per our account executive at Matthews is 1.5 years, to which we heeded her warning and we ordered much earlier to creep into that production line. But we have noticed issues with Matthews buses, along with long wait times. Securing buses promptly is not only important to the fleet, but also to the bonds that we have in place. For those reasons, we have spec'd out our next round of buses for the 26-27 school year from New York Bus Sales. We are shifting our bus purchases to them for the long-range bus replacement cycle. They're closer for repairs, manufacturing, and their timeline is a lot shorter. Continuing our work efforts on electrification, which I know we all love to talk about. 27-28 EV purchase. Will we be able to support this electrification process with minimal infrastructure? And how does that fit into the next capital project? Upgrades to the current facility will be needed as the electrical system we utilize at this time would not be able to support. We have been in contact with Central Hudson to get more detailed information on what that will look like. The state's 2-year extension is being worked on, and we are hopeful that this will give us a cushion to support a capital project in the near future.
I have a question. Just because I know you want one.
I know.
Todd can probably help you out with this too. You mentioned that because of the delay in getting the buses that we ordered, there's a bonding issue. So does the bond time clock start when the bus arrives, or is the bond already running? And
the bond is in motion.
So when you say you ordered it, does that mean you purchased it?
We do a letter of intent with Matthews, which...
With the dollar amount attached?
With the dollar amount attached.
The
right.
total?
The total, complete.
Okay, so that would be, so there's a promise from them that they're going to supply us with.
Correct.
But Mary, when do we pay for it?
When the buses arrive.
Okay, so our money could be collecting interest if it's already on our bond and we have it and so forth. Okay, all right. Silver lining.
If the interest
It's a good rate.
is exceeded the rate.
Yes, currently. Well,
Whoa, never thought that kind of good.
there's also a limit to how long we can have the money borrowed before we actually expend it. We're okay in this situation. Mary always gets a projected from the company, like, you're supposed to get a delivery, and this year was supposed to be November. So we started the bonding process to be completed by the end of October with the intention of, in November, we're gonna be paying out this money. We didn't pay out any of it until January. Ideally, we wanna line that up. While we do earn the interest, I don't wanna be holding bus bond money. So while we try to line it up, we do our best based on the information that's provided to us by the bus vendor.
Which raises another question. Did normally do our bonds kind of coincide with the life of the bus?
I would say
Overlap
yes.
there.
I don't know what you mean, ask again.
Well, so are we borrowing or setting up a bond for 8 years, knowing that the life of the bus is 8 years?
Oh, no, our bonds for the buses are paid off prior to their life.
Okay.
We pay them off before,
So it's shorter term.
yes.
Which that was the concern if we went to the electric buses, because we didn't know what the life.
Correct, you're also gonna pay them off over a longer period of time because the cost of them is more, so you wanna spread that out, so you start to get closer to.
But their life cycle is considered shorter than the.
Okay, correct, yep.
8 years.
For the electric.
Yes.
Versus a diesel would be how long?
10. But you have to take into account the battery
Right.
and the charging stations and all of the things that need to be maintained and repaired and checked. So you can get 5 years out of an electric bus at $500,000.
So they're giving them an 8-year life expectancy, but we know it's not real. We're thinking it
They
might
don't.
probably have, right?
Yeah, they don't.
Gotcha.
They don't.
And I think what's gonna happen is there's gonna be a learning curve. So over time, it will get better. The battery, the life cycle of the battery will be extended, but there will be growing pains in the beginning, 100%. You need to expect that.
And where we live.
Right, there we go, absolutely. I have personal experience with electric cars in cold weather.
It's not good. Yeah, no, just like this morning. It was a tough morning. Good luck with that, electric buses. All right. As you can see in this slide, there is a decrease in equipment. We are looking to purchase a new balancer. The old one is from 2006, and she is in need of replacement. So there may be a trade-in value that we can get on the old one, so that's a possibility as well. There's an increase in software, annual fees, and maintenance costs. Contractual increases, those are various increases in outside labor, insurance liability, software, and radio fees. The radios do cost more money than they did before, and the fees have actually jumped. Materials and supplies increase, tire prices are more, they seem to go up every time we talk. So we also have to take into account that we are replacing B&G equipment tires and also the mounting and balancing fees that we're paying for those. The BOCE services fees are covered, our drug and alcohol testing. And you can also see an increase in contracted transportation services as well due to student needs.
Mary, the decrease in the equipment, is that because last year was the one-time purchase thing?
Yeah. Which we love.
Thank you so much.
The mechanics love. Bus garage expenses will have no increases for the 26-27 school year.
Any other questions for Mary? So a couple final slides on the program component side. There's just a couple various budget codes that don't fit nicely into any of the one areas in terms of a department or a building, so they kind of get put together in just this other chart. So this for other expenses, increases for attorney fees, and then there's an increased cost for equipment contracts, specifically for copiers that we use across the district, is in the BOCE side. Not huge increases, but again, they don't fit in any one area. And then we have the special aid fund. So this is for summer 4408 programming. So this is students who have summer programming as part of their IEP or their individualized education plan. So we as a district are responsible for 20% of the costs of students who participate in the summer programs. The other 80% of those costs are covered through state funding. So we actually have to budget for this in the general fund budget, and then it's a transfer over to the federal where it's paid for out of that federal fund along with the state funds that come from the state. So we base this on the prior year to see how much we spent out the prior year. At this point, looking at last year, we think that we can keep this number the same as it was last year. There might be the potential to decrease this slightly, but pretty much going to remain where it is.
And Todd, just to clarify, this is separate from summer school?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. This is, yes, this is not the summer programming that we do here, which is more like tutoring and supporting students over the summer. This is very specialized special ed programs. Correct.
And does that expense happen in next year? Meaning, like, we're talking about it and doing it, but when we get into next year, summer is the first part.
Correct. Yeah, when you think of this is like one of the first expenditures we have in the budget because programs happen in July and August. The actual billing from those places doesn't always happen for 2 months, which is actually why we're still waiting to determine true costs from this past summer because we haven't been billed true value of all those yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. On the food service side, this is always a good point to note. For many years now, we have had a food service program that is running very efficiently and making money. So if it was not and it was in a deficit, the general fund would actually have to make up that deficit and we'd have to budget money specifically for the purpose of transferring to the cafeteria fund to cover those bills. That is not the case, and you can see the chart here that shows all the way back to 21-22, the total amount of the fund balance or the amount that's in the account at the end of that year. So this past year, 24-25, at the end of that year, there was over $346,000 in the cafeteria fund. So very solid, very safe amount there that we don't have to worry about budgeting any money in general fund to transfer to cafeteria fund. All right, Miss Hubicki just signed. So we're going to shift a little bit. So those are all the pieces that go into the program component. I'm going to shift now and look a little bit at big picture overall, and then take some time to talk about tax levy, as that's the place that we need some input from the board in terms of planning over the next month. So a different formula to look at, and this is an important one. As we develop the budget, we work on both sides of this budget formula. On the left-hand side, the expenditures, what we plan to spend and what the expenses are gonna be that we have in the budget. And on the right-hand side, the planned revenues that we know are going to be coming in. So big goal, obviously, is to make sure that those two balance. Those two numbers have to match up so that we are making sure we are spending within our limits, or that we're using the revenue to pay for our bills. The little graphics on the bottom just show that in pie chart form to give you kind of big picture overall for this current year's budget, the breakdown of the expenses, and then breakdown of the revenues. Revenue as an overall category, where we talk about all the different pieces that make up our revenue sources, will be part of the March 9th meeting. But as I've alluded to a couple times tonight, we want to talk a little bit about one piece, which is a significant piece that makes up a significant percentage of our revenue each year, and that is the tax levy. So our tax levy, we set based on the budget, but also based on the tax cap calculations. This is what I was saying earlier on tonight. There's a formula that the state has that we put our information in as a school district, and it gives us a number that we can't go above if we want to have a budget voted on and just a simple majority of 50% plus one. So the tax cap for 26-27, going through the formula and putting in information, came in at 4.38%, meaning that's the highest that we can go for a tax levy increase and have that simple majority vote approve it. So a little historic look back. 2 slides to look at this. This first one shows all the way back to 2015 up until this current year, 2026. So the year on there is the year ending for that school year. The maroon reddish colored bar is showing the actual tax levy increase. So the percent increase that for that school year, the tax levy increased. And then the gray bar shows the allowable tax levy limit, or what the tax cap was for that year. So we'll take a couple of examples. If you look at this current year, all the way over to the right, 2026 is what it's labeled as up there. The actual tax levy was 1.83%. The allowable tax levy limit, or the tax cap, was 1.84. So for those that remember from last year, that was a very low, the formula came back last year was a very low percentage for us, 1.84. So it was, okay, we're gonna maximize that, and we went to 1.83, right under it, very close to that cap. Picking a different year, just for comparison, if you go back to 2020, which would have been the 1920 school year. So in that year, the allowable tax levy limit or tax cap was 3.15, but the actual levy increase that was adopted was 0.98. Okay, so that's why in that year you see red bar is much shorter than the gray bar, which is higher. So it just kind of gives you a perspective over the past 11 years, the years that we were very close, the actual compared to the tax cap, and then years that there was a difference between those two. Yes?
Am I correct in remembering that at some point we had a conversation by trying to go so far below the allowable, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot?
I love when you set me up for my next slide, and it wasn't even planned.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. So this slide takes that same information, but applies it a little bit differently. This is actual dollar value increase that tax levy increased for that year. So here again, that red maroon colored bar is the actual, what it was actually increased by. And then the gray is what the allowable was if we'd gone all the way to the tax cap. So you'll see the first kind of half or the left-hand side of this graph, that those 2 bars are right on top of each other because the actual was very close to, if not exact, to the allowable amount. If you then look at that 2020 year, to your point, Kelly, this is where it started to separate, right? Because in that 2020 year, the tax cap was 3.15, and we went out at 0.98. So we didn't go to the full amount that the tax levy increase could have gone to, so we were under that number. So this graph is showing cumulatively over time from 2015 all the way through this year. Each year that we didn't go to the full tax cap, there was money there that was not, taxes were not increased to that full amount. Now, there's always good reason for that, right? That when we're talking about this, this is taxpayer dollars, so you're always trying to be fiscally responsible to balance the needs of the district with the ability of the taxpayers. But I thought it was just a good way to look at over time, when there's a tax cap that's higher than what we do is the actual, that gap grows, or there's money left on the table, so to speak. Questions about that?
No, I think as board members, we need to manage all different needs. And so, yes, we could say we're walking away from money, we're leaving it on the table, but at the same time, we're trying to respect the taxpayers and kind of what their fiscal situation is and so forth, so.
Correct. I think why this is a little different this year, and we didn't have as much conversation last year, is 1.84 is a very low percentage across, just to begin with. 1.84 is pretty low. This year, the variables that go into that formula to come back at 4.38, well, that's higher than any tax cap over the past 11 years, and certainly higher than any of the actual. So I thought it was important just to have this kind of historical look back over the time, because Tracy, to your point, then the conversation becomes, what is the board's comfort level, or what do you want to ask us to work within? So this will be my last chart, and then I'll turn it over for some discussion. This is showing, first column, a tax levy increase of, and there's some different options there. Middle column is showing what it would result in, what the actual tax levy is, meaning how much we would collect from taxpayers. And then what the deficit would be, based on the current preliminary budget, what the deficit would be between expenditures and revenue at that rate. So I think it's always good to start with 0, meaning just for informational purposes. If we did not increase taxes at all, finish that sentence. If we didn't increase taxes at all, if it was a 0% increase in taxes, we would collect the same amount next year as we did this year. That would result with the current preliminary budget, there would be a $1.379 million deficit, meaning we would have to cut over $1.3 million out of our expenditure side, based on the preliminary budget, the current preliminary budget. I then put 1.83 in there because that's what it was for this current year, so at a 1.83% increase, it would still be approximately $1 million deficit. And then I don't have to tell every line to you, but you can see line by line, I went by 2.5. I could plug any number in that you would so desire. If you want 2.732, I can put that in there and tell you what the deficit is. It just gives you the different thresholds. And then in that highlighted colored row, you'll see the allowable tax cap is 4.38. So even if we went all the way to that tax cap, there's still a deficit of approximately $550,000. And just for informational purposes, what would we have to go to as a tax levy to get, neutral? It's approximately 7.27%, would give us 10 extra bucks to spend. So I'm not advocating for that, right? That would be requiring more than 50% simple majority, but I think it's important just to see that's the level of increase that would be needed to currently fund what we are looking at in the budget with no cuts, not taking anything out of the expenditure side.
And actually, Todd, I appreciate that you ran that number, because that would be one of the questions that I would have. What would it take in order to...
I think it was last year, that's why it was in my notes.
Well, there you go. See? So then the question is for board members to start thinking about what percentage, then where does each board member feel comfortable, because we need to provide direction for that. So in the past, what we've done is kind of gone around one by one. Mariah, I'll probably start with you then, and you don't have to provide a number, but if you could share your thinking to help the administrators in moving the budget forward. And we all recognize there are a lot of variables that are unknown, so our discussion could be up in the air if something comes back and we will reassess. But we have to put a stake in the ground and say, starting. So you're up.
I was just looking back to try to
see where for special services for some of the incoming kids, so we assume that 5 of them are going, they have to be placed. They have to be placed away.
Is it on?
So if our new incoming students, the 5 or so of them that are coming in for special education have to be placed, let's just assume, at a residential program, what do we cost, what's our cost per year? I think she had mentioned it, but I have to see it in the.
Total for all students, or you
For
asking
one
roughly
kid.
for one student? So the placements and private placements run anywhere from $50,000 all the way up to $200,000. And there's a wide range based on student need, based on the placement, based on whether it's residential or not. But current year, off the top of my head, anywhere from about 50 all the way up to 200,000.
If I could interject, because we also have transportation costs,
Right.
and that is a significant portion of the budget.
Yeah, that for them as well, so if they're, sure, 50 to 100,000 each, plus what would our transportation costs run?
You're looking at $100,000 in
Close
some
for
instances. I remember seeing, yeah, you could be looking at $100,000 per pupil for transportation.
Right, so that's almost $1 million potentially, just for
But Todd, this budget factors in
That's
all
all
of
those
them,
areas.
they're already included in
Yes.
that.
Yes, yes,
It's
based
just
on,
as surprises come up that we have new students at,
correct.
okay.
But the question is, you have from 0 to 7.27. If you could provide
Not picking
your
that one.
thinking on where your mindset is so that the administrators can then say, okay, well, this is the direction we're moving in, because you're looking at a swing of 1.4 million.
Yeah.
So if you had to pick a number, or give me a range, 0 to 2%, or 4 to 7.
Yeah.
Just directionally tell us.
Yeah, I'd probably work in the 3% range ideally, if we can.
All right, as a starting point, that's all we're looking for, to just say.
I have a question, Todd. If I'm understanding what you're saying, if we don't go to the allowable tax cap this year, the allowable tax cap will be lower next year.
So the tax cap percentage is different every year based on the formula. But if we don't go to the full tax cap in any given year, the actual tax levy number is lower. So then the percentage that you apply to that is going to be lower. Whether it's 1% or 4%, you're starting with a smaller number overall. So the percentage increase that you apply to that is going to be slightly lower. That's why over time, that one graph, you start to see it split apart. Not drastic, it's not like one shoots up, but it's a gradual difference between those two.
I think, Karen, one of the things to think about is it's money you can never recover. Because we have the tax cap, it's not like we can go out the next year and say, oh, well, we'll just double it.
Right, we'll make that up by.
Right, we never can make that up, and I think that's really the point of that chart.
Okay, thank
Can
you.
we also just clarify too, we're not saying to raise taxes, like an individual's taxes by a set amount. This is the tax cap that's then split among the roll and so on.
Correct, so this is the tax levy, so the total amount that the district will collect from taxpayers, the percentage that number will increase. Any individual taxpayer's bill is based on the township that they live in, the tax rates in that town, like all the different variables. Yeah. So yes, just because there's, taking right, it's 3%. If it was a 3% tax levy increase, that doesn't mean your taxes as an individual is going to go up by 3%. Could be more, could be less.
I am going to follow the 3% range or BOE.
Eric?
So, is this on?
Me too. Karen's got have the magical microphone. We'll see if that works there.
No?
There you go.
So yeah, in the past few years, I've been looking at that 2.5 as that magic number because of the economy and everything else and the capability of our people to support the school district. Knowing where we are and that our economy is the same as it always was, and I don't know if it's getting any better or any worse per se. I know we're all feeling pain because we think it's not getting better. But I know people have to eat. I'm honestly thinking 3.5%, 4%. Because we've been holding back and staying low, but I don't think we're doing ourselves justice in the long run. And I would lean higher. So if everyone else wants lower, I'll be shortchanged. But I'm thinking that this might be the year that we have to put a little bit more in.
Preliminary, I'm thinking in 2.5 to 3. I don't know that I'm as aggressive as Eric at this point. Unless there is a very specific need, then I would absolutely reconsider it. I'm not considering 0, and I'm not considering 7.2.
I would say I am solidly at a 3 and willing to consider up to 4, depending on what that cut would be. So if you're going to hand me 3% and it's going to mean some significant staffing cuts, then I'm willing to go more toward the 4%.
I think we covered this in the last meeting with the contracts coming up. These numbers would reflect some of the forecasted increases with that, right? That the contracts could increase.
Correct.
Some reasonable. Yeah, I'm definitely one of those people that, like you said, want to start with the 0, and but I'm almost pretty close. I think just from inflation, you can easily find numbers that say 2.3% inflation in New York. So I'm kind of with Tracy, I think, for that 2.5% range. But at the same time, it's killing me because there's no way that's a real number. Inflation is definitely higher, I think, than what is being reported, especially for those that are at more of that subsistence level income. So that's where I'm sitting at the moment, but I'm just amazed at the increases of everything, just to maintain. So yeah, it's not very helpful, but I'm sitting around the 2.5 for a start.
My concern is perception. When we go out to educate the voters, they're going to look at last year being 1.83, and then we're going to work our way to 4%. And I wish Todd had the dollar amount increase on there. Is that somewhere handy I can look at?
The dollar increase for, like, if it was 3%, what that dollar increase is from 1 year to the
Budget
next?
total. What was the budget last year, 36 million?
Total budget last year, current year. Yes, 37,644.
And you're so far proposing?
39,437.
Yeah, I'm at, although I do know math, I know that, I looked at that chart a couple days ago where you provided us where it started to disparage or pair off in two different directions because of the lack of staying right on top of this. And I remember when 2% first came in, I recommended to a business official that year they should have the highest budget they possibly could have. Because I knew it was going to cast forward. They didn't take my advice. But I'm at 2.5 or 3 right now. And that really depends on how we arrive at cutting 800,000. Because I don't want to cut anybody. Or anything. But that doesn't even matter, because even at 4.3, we're still almost 600,000. So you're really looking at 190,000 between 4.38 and 3.0. So there are going to be some tough choices in there. That's where I am.
Todd?
Yeah.
How do year-end funds play into this?
Good question. So year-end funds, when we have the conversation about fund balance, so meaning existing at this end of the year, funds that were not spent within this current budget, how much we want to allocate as revenue being pulled into next year. So as a district, we have tried to be very consistent with that number, because once you start increasing that number, you're basically borrowing money from yourself one year to pay the bills the next, right? Pulling it into the next. So is there an opportunity there? Potentially. For example, in this current year budget, we did increase fund balance to pull over from last year into this current year by a very specific amount for the purpose of the transportation lift. So that was one of the ways that we balanced the budget last year. The last kind of gap when we were trying to get to the point of making it equal was, okay, we have this one-time expense, right? We knew that that larger expense for transportation was going to be a one-time thing. We said we would increase that fund balance being used for that 1 year. So in my projections for next year, I pulled that number back down to what it's been for many years. So to answer your question, is there an opportunity to use those funds? Yes. It's always that caution of how much you use, and once you start using it, what do you do in the following years after that? So in terms of a specific dollar value, it's too early in the year that I have projections that I project from September all the way through the year. That's certainly an area that every week that goes by, that projection gets more solid because we're paying out the money that we need to pay out. We know what we're going to have to pay. So that would be more of a conversation in March. Yes, it's an option, but I would caution how much we use that as an option. Or it could be something similar, like we did last year. Okay, what's something that we know is, again, a one-time expense in next year's budget? Can we use fund balance for that specific purpose with the intention of the following year? That expense is done, pull that back down. Good question.
Do we have anything like that now, Todd? In this budget?
I knew that was going to be the next question. Sorry. No, don't be sorry. Not that it comes to me right away. Last year it was a unique situation. So transportation has always had an equipment line approximately around what it is for next year, which I think I'd have to go back and look, like $5,000 or $6,000. It's nothing huge. So it was a very specific 1 year request that, oh my gosh, this year we need this more expensive piece of equipment. So it was very clear, like, that's a place that we can do this for this one time. Nothing comes to me right off the top of my head, but I could certainly go through the budget and look at it with that lens.
Some of the rollover or replacement schedule on the technology? Since it's long-term anyway, right?
It is, but once we stole from there, then you're creating a gap that if you have to make that back up the next year, then you're just trying to make it back up, right? As opposed to the transportation example, we had to make that back up once we took it out. We pulled the money over, used it for that expense, done that one time, so we can not have to do it again.
All right, any other questions? If not, I'm going to move us on. May I take over? All right, thank you. Do we have one more? Okay, sorry.
No, you're good. It's just, I'd like to bookend things. So back to the last slide, our budget timeline overall. So for the rest of the month of February, which is really this week, continuing to update information as it comes in. The other important piece is we'll use the feedback that the board gave us tonight. As an admin team, we'll take that back. I will work in my projections and see where would that land. If we were somewhere maybe around 3%, what does that mean? As we said earlier tonight, we do have those K-12 district conversations. We've started those conversations already of if we were going to have to reduce expenditure somewhere, what would that look like? We always have a place to start in terms of positions. So when we have retirements, when we have open positions, we always look at those positions, not just for a budget perspective, but for a program perspective. Is this position needed? Do we need to fill it? Do we need this position somewhere else because there's a greater need somewhere else? So those are all conversations that will certainly have started and will continue between now and the March meeting. And then also the other piece that happens really in the month of March, to Karen's question, is that fund balance and looking at reserves and how we utilize them feeds into the March conversation about revenue. But as I've said a couple times, we'll be back here on March 9th to talk about the capital administrative components and then also the revenue.
Todd, I know the revenue conversation, so when you're building all this and all that, it's based off of the projected state budget
Correct.
and what we project the revenue to be.
Correct.
How much change, I mean, I understand you don't know what the legislature is going to come back with, but what else is out there that we're looking at?
So right now, all of these projections in terms of total budget and then the deficit with the revenue is using what the governor put out in her executive budget in January, which was a 1% increase. So the one house budget that comes out from the legislature is due out March 16th, so that's kind of I'm waiting for that day to see what they put out. If they put out a request to go to 2%, that's approximately $100,000 more that we would get from the state. So that deficit column, reduce all those numbers by 100,000, roughly, if we went from 1% to 2%. Other than that, there's no, well, that's not true. I will have final insurance rates next week from our insurance carrier. I have estimates from them that they sent in December for the rollover budget. There's usually some adjustment, and they usually are very conservative, so they go on the high side of December, and they'll come down a little bit, hopefully. And then the health insurance, like I said, is in March. Other than that, there's not like some big, I'm waiting for that thing to come in, and there might be a huge significant savings or a huge increase in revenue. Other than those things I just mentioned, there's not outstanding things, just waiting.
Does this assume, with the new numbers on retirement that just came out last week, I don't know what your assumption was. I know you usually go a little bit high, but they came up with a new number that was lower than they had projected.
For ERS, TRS, is that what you're talking about? I did not see that, I'll be honest, Dave, if it came down. I have the numbers that came out in January. I will sort of check on that now that you're mentioning it.
I believe it was in a document that we got from either the School Board Association or maybe even I think it was the School Board Association.
Okay. I will absolutely check that. And now I'm done. Thank you, Jason.
All right, thank you. And thank you to everyone, really for providing the information. And it's wonderful to see the group effort and it's a collaboration because really we don't have multiple buildings. We have a pre-K through 12 education and that really comes across with all the opportunities. So thank you very much. All right, then I'm going to move us on to our action items. So I need a motion to approve the overnight field trip. James, Eric? Okay, any discussion? Then the field trip for the senior field trip?
Oh, senior.
Right, so the class of 2026 senior field trip with the destination cruise to Bermuda, departing from New Jersey.
There's a trip next week too, so.
Oh, right, no, the one that we are voting on is the class 2026 senior class trip for that. Okay, any discussion? No? Then all in favor? All opposed? the closing open forum, please note the same guidelines as apply as stated during the first open forum. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Do we have any emails? Stephanie? No, I didn't think so. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss personnel matters?
Eric and Dave?
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you.